exception rule to these rules. Now this is cool. An exception rule for the NHRA. Looking NHRA dipstick on the transmission. So, holy shnikes. Center line of the crankshaft is like where they designed the car from. What's up, everybody? This is Dustin with Life in a Mustang, and today it's going to be the second part of the NHRA rulebook. This is the 2017 rulebook. A lot of it does apply to the new one if it is updated, just to let you know. I've already done section 1. I will link that in the description below. This is section 2, which will be drivetrain. If mandated by class requirements, a brace or device must be installed that will prevent the bell housing or adapter shield from being blown rearward in the event of a flywheel or clutch explosion. Material required is 4130 chromoly. Minimum size is 0.875 of an inch ODX 0.083 inch wall. Tubing with 3/8 inch fasteners. Bell lock pins prohibited. 2-2 axle retention devices. All cars except stock cars, some ET cars, may, as noticed in class requirements, must be equipped with a satisfactory means of rear axle retention. Minimum 0.120 inch aluminum or 0.90 inch steel bearing retainer mandatory. Stock C-clip axles retainers prohibited as outlined in class. This is General Regulations section 20, page 11. So let's get this general regulation started. 2-3, each car in competition except those with automatic transmissions must be equipped with a foot-operated clutch, incorporating a positive stop to prevent clutch from going over center or past neutral. As in the case of centrifugal units, all pedals must be covered with non-skid material. NHRA accepted hand controls for the physically challenged. Permitted all sliders. Clutches must meet SFI specs 1.2 and 1.3 or 1.4 as outlined under class requirements. In class requirements that call for an SFI spec 1.2 clutch and an SFI spec 1.5 clutch can be used. Material disc clutch assembly for non-OEM supercharged nitrous oxide injected or no OEM turbocharged vehicles must meet SFI spec 1.3, 1.4, and 1.5. Must utilize an SFI spec 6.2 or 6.3 flywheel shield, except as noted in class requirements. 2-4 driveline. For cars with drivelines that contain universal joints. 2-4 accepted driveline loop for all full body and open body running cars between 750 and 450. And 13.99, 8.59 in place of crossmember located within 6 inches of the universal joint. A front drive shaft loop is required on all cars except vehicles running 1149. So you guys that ain't broken the 10s yet, you don't need them. Equipped with street tires, C-class requirements, full body cars, 7.49. That's a car that's tall and ass. So 4.9 second and quicker with OEM floor. Retained OEM floor may be modified according to class. So you can run up to 5 seconds with a stock floor. Transmissions removal must be intact from 6 inches behind the center of the front universal joint. Rearward, a front drive shaft loop is required. C-class requirements. All this stuff that I mentioned, it's in the book. If you just download the book, you'll see. Full body car, 749 and 449 seconds. Quicker than OEM removal replaced. Each of the drive shaft must be a round 360-degree drive shaft loop within 6 inches of the U-joints and drive shaft tube is also required. C requirements. Open body cars 7.49 to 4.49 seconds and quicker, where the drive shaft passes any part of the driver's body. Each end of the drive shaft must be a round 360-degree drive shaft loop, so none of them square loops. Within 6 inches of U-joints, and drive shaft tube is also required. The drive shaft tube must extend to the full length of the portion of the drive shaft that passes any potential of the driver's body, or extended within 6 inches of the center line of the rear U-joint for center street cars with the driver's seat above the drive shaft in lieu of the drive shaft tube a plate. Minimum thickness of 120-inch steel or titanium with a minimum of 4 attachments points to the chassis, using either a minimum of 15/16 SAE grade 8-bolt welded or 1/4 push-pull pins must be used. The plate must be at least as wide as the seat. C-class requirements for all cars. Drive shafts that do not contain universal joints but pass any part of the driver's body. Each end of the drive shaft must have a full 360 1/16 steel drive shaft loop. General regulations, Section 20, page 12. 1/8 aluminum rear cover must surround the coupler. Front cover must surround the drive shaft from the back of the reservoir and the end of the splice sleeves in the area on the driver's legs. All covers must be securely mounted to the frame. So suitable cross members, reverse or thread members. C-class requirements. Drive shaft loop definition: 360 degree of enclosed 1/4 minimum thickness and 2-inch wide or 7/8 and 0.65-inch steel tubing securely mounted to the frame or frame structure where available, or OEM floor or rocker boxes where a frame does not exist. A location within 6 inches of the front universal joint for support of the drive shaft in an event of a U-joint failure. Drive shaft tube drive shaft definition must be covered by the 360-degree oval. They say that a lot in this. There's different thicknesses and walls and tubes. It says U-joint extended rearward minimum 12 inches. Maximum thickness of the tube is 0.50 steel or titanium drive shaft. Tube must utilize a minimum 4 attachments points to the chassis using either minimum 15/16 SAE grade 8 bolts welded or 1/4 inch push pins. 2-piece tube assembly permitted with a minimum of 6/8 SAE grade 8 bolts. 2.5 flywheel. The stock use of a cast iron flywheel or pressure plate prohibited. The use of aluminum flywheels in top fuel and funny cars is prohibited. Units meeting SFI specs 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, 5, except noted in the class requirements. 2-6 flywheel shields, motor plate general. The use of aluminum belt housing is permitted in all categories and applications. The aluminum belt housing must meet applicable SFI specifications. Absolutely no modification to the manufacturer designs and permitted of the SFI spec 6-1, 6-2, or 6-3 flywheel shields and or lines. And SFI spec 6-1 belt housings is also accepted wherever SFI spec 6-1 belt housing is mandatory or permitted. All 6-2 and 6-3 titanium belt housing SFI 6.3 certify every 2 years or as specified in the manufacturer. SFI 6-1 belt housing must be re-inspected and re-certified every 5 years. 6-1 where SFI spec belt housings are mandatory. All applicable liners, large mounting fasteners, motor plates, etc. as required by SFI specs or the manufacturer must be properly installed for all new flywheel shields and for all flywheel shields certified or recertified. After November 14, 2012, all liners must be flush with the motor plate. Liners may be notched for starters, gears, snouts. Where an SFI 6-1 or 6-3 belt housing is mandatory, a full one-piece motor plate is mandatory. At the rear of the engine block, the motor plate must be constructed of steel or 60-61 T6, 70-75 T6, or 20-24 T3. Rope heat treatment aluminum alloy plate, minimum 1/8 thick for 6-1, minimum 3/16 inch thick for 6.3 applicants, in addition to the fasteners required noted below. The SFI 6.3 flywheel shield must be fastened to the motor plate with 4 1/2-inch diameter grade 5 shoulder bolts or high strength steel, a titanium fastener and nut, one in each quadrant where an SFI 6.2 bell housing is mandatory. See sections 2.8 for motor plate and fastener requirements. The flywheel shield must be fastened to the engine and motor plate with a full, complete, all available engine bolt holes and specified by the manufacturer of grade A bolts. The high strength studs that use an Allen bolt to fasten the shield to the engine. General regulations. All right, section 20, page 13. General regulations, motor plate to fasten covers, etc. Prohibited. All bolts, not studs, or nuts used for flywheel shields, mounting covers, etc. must be identifiable as to grade. All nuts and bolts associated with flywheel shield mountings, covers, etc. must be full standard depth, width, etc. Reduced thickness, bolts, heads, hollow bolts, half nuts, thin wall nuts, etc. prohibited. So no shaving your bolts down to save weight. Maximum depth of flywheel shield is 8 5/8 inches, except top fuel, funny cars, TED, traffic, and advanced ET. Maximum depth 9.4 inches inside. Maximum thickness of all motor plates, mid plates, and mounting plates installed between the engine flywheel shield is 1/2 inch, except SFI 6-1, which may be 1 1/4 inch maximum. All covers and fasteners associated with the flywheel shield must be installed prior to starting engine at any time, including warm-ups. Maximum spacing between flange fasteners in the flywheel shield is 7 inches. Chemical meaning of any other structure weakening product is prohibited. Any weakening of the structure is prohibited. Repair a flywheel shield is prohibited unless it is performed by a manufacturer, recertified by the manufacturer prior to use. For all cars equipped with the SFI 7-1 lower engine ballistics resistant device, a maximum of 2 holes, each no larger than 2 inches in diameter or 3.14 square inches equivalent area, are permitted. The holes must be located entirely below the horizontal center line of the crankshaft. The holes must be at least 0.5 inches from any bell housing and separated by at least 2 inches. SFI 6.2 flywheel shields must have 1 to 2 inch maximum depth hole in the bottom of the back face or shield. The opening in the motor plate for the crankshaft flange may not exceed the crankshaft flange. Diameter by more than 1 inch, except as noted for top fuel funny cars. 2-7 flywheel shield. Top fuel and funny cars equipped with a clutch must have a flywheel. Do they still have a clutch? Shield bell housing that meets SFI spec 6.2 and is labeled accordingly. A one-piece motor plate constructed of 1/4 inch maximum thickness 4130 chromoly steel and fitting between the engine and flywheel shield according to the requirements of SFI specs. 2-2B, 2-3M, or 10-ME is required. The motor plate must be attached to the chassis at 4 corners with at least 2 welded mounting points using minimum 3/8 inch diameter grade 8 bolts and full nuts. The remaining 2 motor plates mounting points must be at least saddled fitting around the frame rail and secured with aircraft type clamps or bolts. Hose clamps are prohibited. 2-7. 1/4 firewall cooling hole locations 2 inch maximum. 7/16 shoulder stud countersunk into firewall. Top fuel and funny cars, the flywheel shield and motor plate are to be fastened to the engine by at least 7 high strength steel or titanium 7/16 bell housing firewall. Holy shnikes. General Regulations, Section 20, page 14. Inch diameter shoulders and studs, countersinks 3/4 inch outside diameter into the engine side of the motor plate and threaded into the engine 1 3/4 inch minimum and nuts of a similar material above the center line of the crankshaft. The motor plate must be fastened to the flywheel shield with at least 7/16 inch diameter grade 8 bolts or high strength steel alloy or titanium studs and nuts below the center line of the crankshaft. The flywheel shield must also be fastened to the motor plate by 4 3/4 inch diameter grade 5 shoulder bolts or high strength steel or titanium fasteners and nuts, one in each quadrant as required. SFI spec 2-3M or 10-1E. A minimum 0.90 inch 4130 steel or titanium liner, or as required by the manufacturer, must be fitted to the flywheel shield. This is the width and the round body surface of the shield. It must be welded together so that it will fit into the body of the flywheel shield and rotate to absorb energy. A 1/4 inch aluminum bolt may be threaded into the body of the flywheel shield to secure the liners. From movement during normal use, the opening in the motor plate to accommodate the crankshaft flange cannot exceed 7/1000 of an inch. At least 5 fasteners, 3/8 inch diameter minimum, must be used to secure aftermarket planetary transmission and or reverse to flywheel shield. 1/2 inch thick rings, bosses, or nuts must be welded or otherwise secured inside the back face of the flywheel shield, through which the fasteners must be secured. As described in section 2-6, any modifications or alterations to the bell housing by anybody other than the original manufacturers are prohibited. Bell housings must be recertified original manufacturer following modifications, clutch adjustments, slots, maintenance, holes and covers, etc. must be installed by the original manufacturer. See General Regulations 2-6, 2-8 flywheel shield. Top alcohol dragsters and top fuel funny cars. Top alcohol dragsters, top alcohol funny cars equipped with a clutch must have all flywheel shield bell housing that meets SFI spec 6-2 and labeled accordingly. All requirements for all top alcohol dragsters and top alcohol funny car bell housing installation are the same for the top fuel and funny car, with the following exceptions. So here's what's different about that. One piece motor plate constructed of 1/4 inch minimum thickness, 20-24 T3, 60-61 or 70-75 T6 aluminum, and fitted between the engine and flywheel shields according to the requirements of the SFI. Spec 2-2B, 2-1 or 2-1E is required. The motor plate must be attached to the chassis at all 4 corners with at least 2 welded mounting points, utilizing a minimum of 3/8 inch diameter grade A bolts and full nuts. The requirements: 2 motor plates mounting points must be at least saddle fitting. It sounds like I'm reading this stuff over and over, but it's for individual classes. That's why it keeps repeating a lot of the same things. Frame rails and secured with aircraft style clips. Motor plates are to be fastened to the engine by at least 7 3/8 diameter grade A bolts or high strength steel titanium studs threads into the engine 3/4 of an inch minimum, and nuts 3/4 of an inch minimum, and the nuts of a similar material above the center line of the crankshaft the motor plate must be fastened to. The flywheel shield with at least 8 3/8 inch diameter grade A bolts or high strength steel alloy, or titanium studs and nuts below the center line and crankshaft. The flywheel shield must also be fastened to the motor plate by 4 3/4 inch diameter grade 5 shoulder bolts or high strength steel or titanium fasteners and nuts, one in each quadrant as required by SFI Spec 2-1 or 10-1E. Top Fuel dragsters and Top Fuel funny cars. General regulations. Section 20, page 5, general regulations. Car. The opening in the motor plate for the crankshaft flywheel flange may not exceed the crankshaft diameter by more than 1 inch. See general regulations 2-6. How many times you read that by now, huh? 2-9, I guess if you were an engineer building these drag cars, you would be. Flywheel shield, pro stock, and comp as described in section 2-61. Any modifications or alterations to the bell housing by anyone other than the original manufacturer are prohibited. Bell housing mess. I'm starting to wonder if I put this same stuff in my teleprompter over and over. Following modifications, clutch adjustments, slots, maintenance holes, and covers, etc. must be installed by the original manufacturer. See section 2-6 for motor plate and general requirements. Flywheel shield must be fastened to the engine and motor plate with a full, complete, all available engine bolt holes or as specified by the manufacturer. How did I know that was coming? A minimum of 3/8 inch diameter grade A bolts or high strength steel studs above the center line of that crankshaft. A lot of things, if you'll notice, you read the NHRA rulebook, center line of the crankshaft is like where they designed the car from. Shield at the least 3/8 diameter grade A bolts or high strength steel alloyed or titanium studs and the nuts below the center line of the crankshaft and opening in the motor plate for an alternative. Starter location is permitted but it may not exceed 2 inches in diameter, and when such an opening is present, only one cooling hole permitted in the motor plate. 2-10 flywheel shield other classes. All other cars using a clutch running 11.49. Now this is for us. That all that other stuff, I know you don't got one of those. Maybe you do. But this is for us. 11.49 quicker must be equipped with SFI 6-1, 6-2, 6-3. Flywheel shield. See section 2-6 for motor plate and general requirements. By now you've read that if you read it for the big boys up there, the Top Fuel cars. 3-inch, 7-inch. Hold on. Let me scroll back in. Hold on. Okay. General requirements that shall be a minimum of 7 3/8-inch diameter grade 8 bolts or high strength steel studs in the top half of the bell housing. There shall be a minimum 8 3/8-inch diameter grade A bolts or high strength steel studs in the bottom half of the bell housing. To the motor plate manufacturers or repairs to the flywheel shield prohibited except if done by the manufacturer. We got that, don't we? Exception rule to these rules. Now this is cool. An exception rule for the NHRA rule book. So you Volkswagen and Porsche owners get an exception in the NHRA rule book. Who knew? That's a great thumbnail. Volkswagens and Porsche cars are not required to have a shield when the engine is normally aspirated and gasoline burning. Porsche's engines must use a steel billet flywheel. All other rear wheel drive cars running 1149 or quicker for which an SFI 6-1, 6-2 flywheel shield is not commercially available must use an SFI 6-1, 6-2 or 6-3 flywheel shield from another application and mount it to the motor plate that is mounted to the engine block at the all available bolt holes or must be equipped with a flywheel shield made of 1/4 inch minimum thickness steel plate securely mounted to the frame or frame structure and completely surrounding the bell housing 360 degrees. The flywheel shield shall not be bolted to either the bell housing engine or the flywheel shield. Must be extended forward to a point at least 1 inch ahead of the flywheel and 1 inch to the rear of the rotating components of the clutch. I still think that's cool that there's ruling for you Volkswagen and Porsche guys out there, NA. All front-wheel drive cars or transverse mounted applications using a clutch and running 11.49 or quicker, for which an SFI spec 6-1, 6-2, or 6-3 flywheel shield is not commercially available, must be equipped with a flywheel shield made of 1/4 inch minimum steel plate. Shield must surround the belt housing completely. That's the second time they've said this. Different category, different, adjacent to different differential and axle shafts must be multiple splice with pieces bolted together using minimum 3/8 inch diameter grade 5 or M10 class 8.8 bolts may be attached to the engine or the bell housing. Titanium flywheel shields are permitted only in Top Fuel Funny Car, Pro Stock, Top Alcohol, Dragsters, Top Alcohol, Funny Car, Comp, Super Gas, etc., ET, and Advanced ET. General Regulations, Section 20, page 16. Hopefully this is more to do with us street guys. So let's see. 2-11 rear end welded spider gears. Welded spider gears, what? Okay, hold on. Okay. General Regulations, Section 20, page 16, 211, rear end welded spider gears, and prohibited in all classes. 4-wheel drive prohibited per class requirements. Aftermarket axles and axle retainers. Devices mandatory on Top Fuel Funny Car, Pro Stock, Top Alcohol, Dragster. This isn't us. Top Alcohol, Funny Car, Super Gas, Super Gas, Street, and 1099 or quicker. Okay, so here's something that has to do with us. So if you it's about your welded spider gears. Anyways, 1099 or quicker ET cars also mandatory on any cars regardless of class or ET with a spoon. Has to do with this. 2-11-12 transmission, all cars and trucks in competition except for motorcycles, snowmobiles. 1099 or quicker ET cars also mandatory on any car regardless of class or ET with a spool. 2-12 transmissions, all cars and trucks in competition except motorcycles or snowmobiles, powered dragsters must be equipped with a reverse gear. You got to be able to back that car up. 2-13 transmission, aftermarket planetary and transmission shield covers, transmissions and receivers that meets SFI spec 4-1 is mandatory if engine burns nitromethane or engine burns methanol or nitrous oxide and runs a 9.99 seconds or quicker. Vehicles run 7.49 seconds or quicker, or engines supercharged, turbocharged, or any overdrive unit. Air shifters bottles must be stamped DOT 1,800 pound rating minimum and be securely mounted, no tie wraps or hose clamps. At least 3 bolts 3/8 inch thick minimum must be used to secure aftermarket planetary transmissions to bell housing, except as noted in Top Fuel Funny Car, Top Fuel Alcohol, Top Fuel, all them Top Fuel guys, not us. 2-14 transmission, automatic, NHRA accepted. All cars running 10-99, 6-99 seconds and quicker must have an NHRA accepted looking type dipstick. Hold on. You gotta have an NHRA accepted looking dripstick. Dip. You gotta have a NHRA. Okay, all cars running 1099 or 699 quicker have to have an accepted looking NHRA dipstick on the transmission. So it's got, what does it say, NHRA? Dipstick. Tubes must be securely fastened, i.e. bolted, aircraft clamped, wire ties, hose clamps, etc. Prohibited. Any non-OEM automatic floor-mounted automatic shifters must be equipped with a spring-loaded positive reverse lockout device. This is to prevent the car from accidentally being shifted, being put into reverse gear. Functional neutral safety switch mandatory. All transmission lines must be metallic or a high pressure type hose. All vehicles running 1099 seconds, 699 or faster than 135 miles an hour, except some stock and super stock classes as noted under class requirements, using an automatic transmission must be equipped with a transmission shield. So if you're close to the 10 seconds and you're on an automatic, you gotta have a transmission shield. SFI spec 4-1 labeled accordingly. Blank net type shield appropriately labeled as meeting SFI spec 4-1 permitted. All non-blanket type shields must be incorporated to or a non-pre-manufacture instructions 3/4 x 1/8 inch straps that bolts to the shield on each side of the pass under the transmission pan, or transmission pan must be labeled as meeting SFI specs 4-1 permitted in all classes where an automatic transmission is used. Comp, super gas 9.99 or quicker ET cars and 135 miles an hour and 135 miles an hour or faster ET cars using an automatic transmission, Linko Drive or BRT must be equipped with a flex plate meeting SFI specs 29-1 and covered by flex plate shield meeting SFI specs 30-1. Transmissions that can utilize a higher gear trans brake must be supported by the use of 2 mandatory buttons on the arm system, second as the main trans brake. Air shifters, bottles must be stamped 1,800 pounds rating minimum and be securely mounted. No tie wraps, no hose clamps, general regulations. That's it. So guys, I hope you enjoyed. That was, of course, the Driveline. It's, if you're gonna look in the NHRA rulebook, that was the second part of, I think it's 2. It starts at 2-2, I think, and it's Drivetrain. All right, guys, I'm Dustin. This has been Life in a Mustang. That was Drivetrain. I think it starts at 2-2. It's in the NHRA rulebook. Go ahead and look that up if you're gonna be running automatics. If you're gonna be running any kind of car in the 10s. Or faster, you probably need to read these rules or listen to them, because I just read them. And look for them yourself. You can download the PDF file. That's something you can do. I'm not going to put the link for that in the description, but you can find it. Just go to NHRA website, and it's there. You can read it. You can listen to this video. And so go out there, get your drive lines in spec. Anybody 135 miles an hour or faster probably needs to start looking into these rules if you bring your car to the track. Like I said, I'm Dustin. This is Life in a Mustang. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll catch you later. Peace.